Welcome back to Essentials Explained. If you came from our previous video, we're going to be continuing our discussion on building simple tables within Excel. This table will be a question list that we will build both manually and utilizing conditional formatting. If you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe, and let's jump into the content. So we just walked through how to build a simple tracker table. Now let's talk about a different kind of table, which would be for the questions that you would be asking these franchisees. So I'm just gonna copy this tab over. Control drag lets you do that easily. If you don't know, you can also just obviously go in here, move copy, create a copy. That also works. I'll delete this sheet with Alt EL. What we want to do, and I'll just delete all of these different columns, is build some kind of list that enables us to ask certain questions. So what I'm going to do is just put a category column, a question column, and then a response column, right? Response or notes. I don't think this client alignment is needed, so I'll remove that. I don't think this last column is needed either, so I'll remove that. And I actually want to just maybe put this where the franchisees are. What we want to do is, let's say we have our top category is financial trends, and I'll just remove all this formatting. So if you go to Alt H E, gives you a bunch of different options of what you want to remove. I can just clear formatting, right? If I want to clear everything, I go Alt H E A, and that would clear all. If I wanted to go and say financial trends is my top group, my question is, what is happening with X, Y, and Z? And then the response we'll just leave blank, but let's say we want to make that like a light yellow just to be clear. So I can drag this down, and then maybe I actually just don't want to show this financial trends every time. I just want to show, it kind of as the top bucket. I might want to have different subcategories or different categories in this question list. So maybe I have product trends, and I can carry that down. I can also probably have maybe customer trends. So if I say customer trends, I think that also works. If you want to clean this up, right, Alt HOI will auto format these. If you want to make this a little bit bigger, Alt HOW will give you the column width so you can make that bigger. What I would do is add some kind of outside border and then some kind of inside border, right? So Control 1 will pull up your border options. You can just click outline. And then if you want to do an inside border, I like this dashed, maybe make it like a light gray inside horizontal. And you just have like a pretty simple inside border here. Maybe you don't want that in the first column. So Control 1, you can go none inside horizontal. And then maybe you want these all bold, and you can do some kind of, I've heard this called zebra shaving, but you can, Alt HH, maybe make this like the lightest color gray, maybe make this next one down the darker color gray, and make this, last one kind of the lightest color gray. So you have this like zebra trend. If you want to change this top, maybe you want to make this like a different color because the gray kind of blends in now. You could go maybe fill. Let's do, like a dark blue. The font should now be white. You can make this 12, and let's do bold italic. So quick way to do that. If you want inside borders, right, like you see these kind of blend together. Control 1, border, color, white. Actually, let me make sure I'm on the right one. So solid line is what I want. White. Inside vertical. So inside vertical here, hit OK. And then you have these kind of nice little separators, and that makes that look a little bit nicer. And then last thing I want to do is I actually just want to put a real border in between my different groups. So I'm just going to highlight this, Control 1, make sure my color's black, straight line, top, bottom. Okay. So that looks pretty good. I think that's honestly pretty decent. And, if you had a number of different questions and you wanted to go through them, you could pretty easily use this. I think the formatting's fine. It doesn't really have an issue for me at all. Let's talk about a faster way to do this, utilizing conditional formatting. So, right, this is pretty fast to do, but If you wanted to put in more groups, you'd probably have to, copy this and then have, maybe update it. Probably not that difficult to do, right? If you want to like group 3 trends or whatever, that isn't like super crazy to do, and you could always just copy these and paste them below. If you're interested in learning some cool stuff you can do with conditional formatting, this is a really fast way to do it, especially once you have it set up and if you understand how it works. So I'm going to copy this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 columns because I like to use columns to help myself because it makes it a little bit simpler. So this first column we're going to call helper. And our first row, so this will be our top category, I'm just going to put the number 1. And so what we'll say is we want to know when this category changes from financial trends to product trends. So what we need to know is when there is text in column B. So if I say if is blank B24, I can close that, and then if the value is true, right, if it's blank, I just want the same value that I had above. So I'm just going to link that to the row above. And then if that's not true, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use another if statement. So if this above is equal to 1, return a 2. If not, return a 1. So I can just fill this down. You can see I have this helper column where all of my financial trends, and maybe I'll just, sorry if this is hard to read, all of my financial trends are 1, all of my product trends are 2, and all my customer trends are 1. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add, let me just call this lookup. And what this will do is this will tell me whenever there's a change. And so this will make it really, really simple for me to know where one group changes into the next. What I can do is simply say this will be blank and then equals if this number equals this number blank. If not, let's call this change. That's a pretty simple way to do it. So we have change here. Now I'm going to use my conditional formatting. I have these 2 set up just to help me do my conditional formatting really, really easily. So if I go here and I can do this a couple ways. Alt-HL will be the format for conditional formatting, or I can just go up here, select it, highlight cells, more rules. And I'm going to use a formula. And so this formula is my helper column, and I will use F4 to toggle that through, make sure the rows are relative, the column can stay absolute, is equal to 1. I want it this lightest gray color. And I'll just hit OK, and I'll hit OK. I want to do that one more time, so Alt-HL, highlight cells, M for more rules, use a formula. The formula will be G23, change that. Absolute in the columns, relative in the rows is equal to 2. So my other format, and I'll just make this as darker color gray. Hit OK. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to make sure I add this thick border. I'll do the same thing. So Alt-HL, M for more rules, use a formula. And what I want to know is, does column H 23, right? I'll toggle through that to leave it an H, but leave the rows relative is equal to change. What I want for that format is I want the border to have a top straight border. So if I hit OK, that will work. And if I just copy this formatting and paste it down, oops, that will, right? So what happened was there's a top border here. So when I formatted that down, it brought all the borders with it. If I go and select all this and go up to home, borders, no borders, it'll delete those, but these borders stay, right? Because what I just did was build that with the conditional formatting. And so the last thing I actually want to do is I want this straight border to go all the way across. Like so far that wouldn't be working, right? If I made, a new group, that wouldn't be perfect. And so if I go back to my conditional formatting, I go to manage rules, it'll show me all the different rules of it I built. So we have our light gray, our dark gray, and then our hot border. If instead of having this go from B23 to B33, I instead wanted to go from B23 to D33, and just hit apply, okay. And so let's say I just want to actually insert, maybe a bunch of rows here. And what I probably want to do is actually just drag this down I'm gonna make sure this formula gets dragged down right because I just updated that. So I'm just gonna drag this down as well to make sure it's referencing the right cell. And now if I put in, a new group, like I could even change this here into, group 3. You can see how quickly that updates, right? Like if I wanted to, do anything, like let's say I actually want to make this group 4. Now I have this really super dynamic zebra formatting, and I can, put an outside border on this if I wanted to, just to make it look a little nicer. But it gives me all this optionality, right? I can change this back to customer trends. I can add groups. I can add more groups to the bottom. So if I wanted to, bring this down, but let's say this was all customer trends and this wanted to be maybe margin trends, delete just this column. I have this nice zebra format no matter what I want to do. So this is a really automated way to update your tables and maintain that consistent zebra formatting. If you want to make your lookup a little more obvious, you can add a border there, you can add another border, maybe make this bold. The one thing I want to call out, right, really easy to insert new rows, and I can just drag this down and that works. This formula you want to be very careful with, and you want to make sure you drag this formula all the way down, because what can happen is you can have some issues with your data if you don't be extra careful with this lookup column. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say I want to insert a new group here. I grab this, I paste it up here. That doesn't work. So why is that? It's because this formula didn't update, right? When I added in the new rows, this cell continued to reference its old cell. If I just come up here, let's say I drag that down, everything will get fixed and the zebra formatting will work. So make sure you are checking this column and make sure this column is working correctly if you ever have an issue in your core table. So we just built a pretty automated way to build this table. Again, I don't think this is necessarily the only way to do it. I think if you come up here and you just want to copy this and you call it, maybe group 4 trends, that's also a totally fine way to do it and will get you to the same result. Slightly less automated, slightly less work to set up, but 2 different ways to achieve the same result that I think are both great approaches and will help you build a cleanly formatted question list with an easy space to take notes. If you're interested in learning more about Paste Special, we'll be covering it in detail in our next video. Otherwise, thank you for joining us at Essentials Explained, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.